Well, hello. Well, here we are for another Star of the Month. And I wanted to introduce everyone to Elizabeth Weihmiller, which is one of our spectacular UVA tutors, teachers, and astrologers. She came on board a while back, and I just wanted to honor Elizabeth because she has done such an incredible job, such an asset to the University of Vedic Astrology. And she's doing readings, and you guys will want to check her out because I am totally impressed. Elizabeth just came on, and I mean, she got the principles like, well, I always tell her, you must have been an astrologer in your past life because there's no way you could be this good at this quickly. But she has counseling skills and abilities. She is so natural with wanting to help people. But I wanted to bring Elizabeth on so everyone out there could meet her and learn more about her and see what she's all about, and you know how she got into astrology and what it's all about for her. So Elizabeth, take the floor. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, your life. People want to know.
So thank you for having me, Joni. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you.
Thank you.
So I am Washington, D.C. native, born Washington, D.C., grew up in Virginia. Virginia has my heart. The slogan of the state is Virginia's for lovers. You know, I love this state. But, you know, it's funny because I never really knew about astrology, but I always loved taking the telescope and looking at the planets and the stars. And I was always wishing upon stars. And, you know, little did I know then where that would like ultimately take me. And so I kind of started getting into some stuff. Went to college. I actually went to college in Flagstaff, Arizona, so where Pluto was, you know, discovered. So another step closer to astrology. And, you know, I went into business management and I was like, okay, this is great. This is what I want to do. You know, decided to work for my mom's company. Grew up being like, I'm never joining the family business. I'm not doing it. Then I graduated college and was like, guess what I'm doing? Joining the family business. Like, let's do this. Because I love working with people. I love coaching people. I love helping people become more of who they can be and like really dig out that their talents and their gifts. And, you know, we all have our unique gifts. And, you know, to backtrack a little bit, I had events in my life that, you know, really took me on a more spiritual path in life and took me on the more everything happens for a reason route. My parents divorced when I was 3 years old. My stepdad died my senior year of, you know, high school, which once I became an astrologer, you know, I looked at all the transits and I was like, oh my gosh, like it's there. Like it all was in the chart. So you know, my mom kind of got me into it. She had a friend that got her into it. She was a total skeptic, and she did a reading with Joni. And then she was like, you need to do one. And I was like, okay, like I'll do one. So, you know, Joni looks at my chart and she's just like, you know, you could coaching people, helping people, you could be a great astrologer. And I kind of was like, okay, like, that's great. Like, you know, clearly it can be a career with like looking at you and like other people out there. And so I joined Joni's University of Vedic Astrology, and it just clicked. I fell in love with astrology, and the information you can get out of these charts is just, it's powerful. It's incredible. You know, as Joni, I know you like to say that it's like 70% kind of written in the stars, but you still have that 30% free will. And if you don't know that you've got, you know, what to kind of watch out for or avoid or, you know, any of that, you can't change it. Like you can't work around it. So that really, you know, and once I started studying, I took it everywhere. I was doing exams on a cruise in South America. I was submitting them from all over the place at the time. And I just did it. And the minute I graduated, I started my own practice. And ever since then, I really have this passion of bringing, you know, what's considered a very more so accepted now, but more out there science. And I bring it into corporations. I have clients that are CEOs and, you know, high ups in corporations that people are like, oh, they'd never. And I'm like, no, they, you know, they love it. They live off of it. They're like, oh my gosh, like, when's my update reading? Like, when are we doing it? We need to get this done. And they just, you know, they value it, and they value the insight they get from it. So that just, you know, it all kind of, it came together. I let life guide me. I never plan my life. I try to plan and it doesn't work. It goes other ways. So I've given up. I just go with the flow.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
Yeah. So
how I got here.
tell me, you know, your mom got you into this, right? So
Yep.
that's so interesting. And I think I remember, yes, I read for your mom before you. Yeah, I remember it all now. It's all coming back.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, but you learn this so fast, and you know, it's just like it clicked with you. And I have to say, you're one of the best tutors we have at UVA. Everyone loves you because I feel like you're so passionate about it. You kind of get people excited about it too. Yes. So, Elizabeth, your ability to inspire others is really, I think, one of your greatest gifts. And I think as a teacher, people always remember those teachers that inspire us and motivate us to learn and get us excited. And I think, well, I know you have that quality about you. So I want you to kind of give people a feel of what your experience was while you were in UVA, and what that, you know, tell us what you felt about the whole process involved.
I mean, you know what, since I did, you know, I joined UVA, I paid for all the semesters up front because I knew I was just like, I'm doing them all. I
Mhm.
have the ability to pay for them. So I'm just gonna take the leap and do it. You know, my tutor was really good with me. He was available for questions. And, you know, even though we were in completely opposite time zones, because my tutor was in Singapore and I'm on Eastern Standard Time. But always answered questions. So I really tried to, once I went through it and graduated, you know, I took the time, I watched the videos, I read the book, you know, I listened to all the live classes. Those are so powerful to make everything come together, because you can read and you can watch the videos, but, you know, without that real life application of real life events and real people that we get to watch their lives play out, you know, you can't really learn it. And then it's also spending the time with your own chart and family members' charts. And like, you need those people closest to you that can open up, and you know their events, and like, you can understand the transits. And, you know, so that really, through the university, I went fast. So it's about a year process, but I did it in about 8 months. But I really, you know, I just buckled down, studied. And because I loved it, it was easy. So I was spending my nights, my weekends, like just learning and soaking it in, and, you know, having Joni on the live webinars to be able to ask questions. And like, you know, you have her, and then you have the tutors that have come up and trained under Joni, and, you know, we're there to answer questions. I always tell when I get new students, I'm like, email me questions, like, do not hesitate. There's no such thing as like a stupid question. Like, I'd rather you ask me the questions than assume that you know the answer and then it be wrong, because eventually that's going to play out where you're doing a reading and like you're giving someone wrong input, and then they, you know, they take that and use it. And if it's the wrong advice because you didn't ask a question that was simple to ask. So it's, you know, I really try to give my students the time. You know, I spend nights grading tests and like, you know, answering questions, but it's fun for me. It's really fun. It's fun to see the students grow, and, you know, you're with your tutor the whole, you know, as long as you're in the university, that's your tutor. So it's really important that if you know, I would say we all mesh with different people. And if you find you're not meshing with your tutor, reach out and like, see if you can switch. Cause all the tutors, we kind of switch students around if something's not going well, or, you know, it's one of the great things is if you don't like the person, don't suffer through, because we can we switch, and it's like no point in being miserable for a year while you're going through the process.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a great group of people. We all love astrology. We all, you know, we all nerd out. I remember I just moved into my home last year, and Jupiter, Saturn were conjunct, and it was right out my balcony in the sky that the conjunction was happening. And I was just sitting on my balcony like, this is so like, we're all just like fun together. We just, we have fun. We have fun. We learn, we share. I can't say enough about the university. I love it. I love Joni,
Thank you. Yeah, well, one thing about you, Elizabeth, is your counseling skills. You are a natural born counselor. I mean, you've had practice before you started here with your work. And I think that's one of the attributes that you're here to teach other people about how to counsel, how to really get involved with the client. Because I noticed, with UVA, the very last exam is when you do a real reading, and I stand by and observe. And I was like, this girl is so totally natural. What is it that you do? And then I found out the extent of all your counseling skills. Well, it really shined through during that one-on-one reading that you did. And, that's another part of astrology, I think, that's so important that we have to take into account when we're doing readings. And this is what I want my students to learn too, is counseling skills. A bedside manner is important. And you've just got to connect with people when you're doing a reading. Ask them, what do you need? What are you feeling right now? What do you want out of this reading? And get to know the people. Elizabeth, you did that so beautifully. And you know what? It shines through that you really love people. That's another thing.
I do. I really do. I mean, it's so funny because with astrology, and a lot of people don't think about this, it can be a very personal experience. I mean, some of the things astrologers can see in charts can be very sensitive to bring up. Questions people come to you with are very sensitive. So you need that discernment and that ability to really have that sensitivity and that empathy, but also know, like, if they come to you, you can't just be like, well, here's the transit going on. It's like, right. They're like, okay, that's great. What do I do with it? Like, what's your advice? So I bring, I still do training and development and coaching within corporations. And it's really like, okay, you've got this potential transit. How can you work with it? How can you, like, there's some transits that are just, they're heavy. And it's like, okay, well, if you're going through it, you kind of know, okay, I need to make sure I'm eating better or getting that exercise to get more of the endorphins to kind of keep my spirit up, or making sure my friends are forcing me out so that I'm not becoming like isolated. So it's like really working with them and being like, okay, here's what's going on, but here's how you can like bring it down to that practical real life. How do I put it into my life? How do I really like use it and apply it and kind of use it in your favor in a sense, even on the hard transits? Because there are, there's the great transits, as we know, but there's also the ones that bring their challenges and their learnings and life lessons. And, it's working with that. And I love seeing clients take it and use it and be successful. And I always tell them to email me their successes and how they're feeling. And I love hearing that and staying in touch with, my clients and seeing how it's playing out and what's going on. Cause it also helps me continue to learn so that I can better serve everybody going forward as well.
I agree. I always say this, even with doing as many chart readings as I have, I still always learn something new from every single chart reading I do. It's just amazing. You're always learning. And astrology, I always believe we're just on the tip of the iceberg right now with this discoveries with astrology. There's a lot more. And we're even incorporating all these research groups as a part of UVA. And we're going to have a research journal that all the students have put together according to their interests and what they've come together, research and discovered beyond what we already know with astrology. So I know Elizabeth will be a leader in all of these new venues and things that we're starting up here at UVA. And we always encourage our tutors to become teachers. In other words, have their own platforms where they're going to have their own semesters and classes as well. This is not going to be just me as the main teacher, because Shrikala, she has her own semesters on Joni astrology. And I know, Elizabeth, you've got your specific talents that I know you're going to develop and present to all the students, because we all have our own, like you say, individual talents. And astrology actually shows us what they are and what we're here to do with them. So, I mean, it's such a powerful healing tool for life. And I know you use it for its greatest capacity. But I want you to tell everybody about a little experience that you had as using astrology, as you say, for,
Yep.
for watching your life, looking at as the weather forecast and how you can navigate your life better through astrology. Because I think I gave you a reading like right before you went on a vacation. So
Yep.
you want to tell everybody about that experience?
Yep, so it's actually funny. So at the time I was still, I had graduated, but I was still, very much like learning. So like I still turned to, Joni and like get input from her and, to continue learning more. But my mom actually had an update reading with you, and she was asking about some vacation dates, and looking at her chart, you're like, yeah, but you have to be back by like January 15th, like drop dead. You got to be off your trip and you got to get back. And so I was like, okay, I should do the update reading too, since we were going on this trip together, and see kind of what my chart says. She's like, okay, same thing. Like you've got to be back by January 15th. So my mom and I were actually doing a cruise of Southeast Asia, December of 2019. Obviously, hindsight, we all know where this is kind of going. And so we enjoyed our trip. We did it, the astrologer and me, we did it because they literally were parking the boat in the middle of the ocean to watch the total solar eclipse. Wow. So I was super excited, and I was like, as we know, eclipses trigger things and they trigger events, and where they kind of land as the total is the area that can kind of start those events. And so it was over that China, Southeast Asia area that COVID did begin. So we were on this trip. We had somebody that was medevac the day of the solar eclipse. They parked us outside of Singapore, and they're like, we have somebody we need to medevac off this ship. And we're like, okay, at the time we're like, okay, they had like a heart attack, or like they've got to get them to Singapore. It makes sense. Looking back, given everything that's come down, there were tons of people sick on this ship. How my mom and I walked off this ship not sick, I do not know. But we are almost positive that the person medevaced off was probably COVID, whatever symptoms they got. Mm-hmm. So we fly back. We're on planes for 15 hours, 15 plus hours, a nice little metal tube, best place to breed. Cruise ships and airplanes, love them. Best place to breed disease. Right. Oh so we get back, and, January comes along and February comes along, and then, early March, well, we start hearing about it February. By early March, the US we're shut down, we're locked down. Outside of grocery stores, we're not going anywhere. And we're just like, okay, yep, got to continue using, this is why we use astrology. Like, you can see this stuff. And I remember telling clients that, even some of the clients that don't even believe in astrology have never done readings with me, but like I throw it in, I'm like, well, just, I would say don't travel around this time. And they're like, well, why? And I'm like, well, there could be something. And they're like, okay, Elizabeth, like, we've worked with you long enough. We trust you, but like, still think you're a little insane, which I'm totally fine with. I'm good with it. And they've come back and they're like, oh, okay, you told me not to travel, and it's a good thing I wasn't traveling, given all the restrictions and people getting stuck places. And yeah, I can't say enough, whether it's traveling or surgeries, as we know, because we know there's better times for higher success rates or lower healing times. Just, it can be little stuff. I have clients that are like, hey, I'm having a minor procedure. Can you just quickly check? Absolutely. Like, I will always tell you, absolutely. Like, Let's do it. Let's just make sure, like, it's amazing what astrology can do and what you can see. And, if you can see that and understand it, there's obviously times, as we know, that you can't avoid certain things, and you can't avoid maybe traveling, or, stuff comes up. But if you can shift your dates just a little bit and it makes that huge difference, why wouldn't you? Like,
Right.
you know.
Right. You could have been that ship that was quarantined out in the ocean for a month or two or something. It was like I think it was just like right after you got back. Mm-hmm.
It was a little too close to home because it was a princess ship and we were actually on a different princess ship in Southeast Asia. So my mom and I were just like, okay, well, this is fun. Too close for comfort for us, but we listened and, you know, we now do it. We always check our trips. It's like, is this a good time to travel? Is this a good, you know, is this a good time to buy a house? I mean, I bought my house using astrology. So, I mean, you can see, you know, is it a good time to move? Because there's times where like it may feel like you want to move and it's going to be so temporary that it's like just try to get through that passing energy until it's not like such a temporary move if you can avoid it.
Well, what was going on in your chart when you did move? What predicted that? Do you remember?
I do. So it's funny. I broke 2 rules. I moved during Mars retrograde and Mercury retrograde. I signed my house contract. But I did all my research. I read it all. I was, you know, testing it. I was looking at my own chart and I was like, okay, this will be good. I will say, funny to the Mercury, my AC just broke. So I was like, well, but maybe I shouldn't have done that during Mercury retrograde.
Yeah.
But, you know, things happen. But Jupiter is the planet that grants opportunities. You know, I natally have my natal Saturn in my 4th house in Sagittarius. And Jupiter was just getting ready to move out of Sagittarius into Capricorn. So I had Jupiter granting that opportunity in my 4th house of home and moving. Yes. And then I had Saturn giving me that, like, you know, hard work to be able to really pull it all together. And just, you know, it manifested where I now live. And
so was Jupiter transiting in your 3rd house right before it went into the 4th house when you moved?
It was just about to go into my 5th house.
Okay, so it was in the 4th house still when you moved.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because I always note that Jupiter's either in the 3rd or in the 4th when people move. Yeah. And I know you know that because it's just, you know, Jupiter is where the opportunities are, and wherever it goes in your chart is going to bring you that opportunity. I bet your house is beautiful.
It is. I love it. I have mountain views out in Virginia, and, you know,
so cool.
The process just, it came together. You know, I always joke in my life, I decide I'm doing something and it just kind of manifests itself. You know, I decided about 2 weeks, a week before I put a contract in that I wanted to move out. And I was like, okay, it's going to be what it'll be. The markets were a little crazy in this area already. And I was like, well, if it takes me time, I can take the time to look. I don't have to do it immediately. And I got lucky. I was the only contract on this house, and, you know, somehow, and now I know, I look back and it's like people are offering ridiculous amounts of money over listing that I'm like, okay, I bought at the perfect time. Thank you, Jupiter. Like, thank you.
Yes, yes. And another thing is, you know, knowing what you can push forward for when Jupiter is in particular places is huge. And that's, you know, it's such an easy thing to be able to help people with that, I think, anyway. Yeah.
It is. I mean, if you know that it's, you know, and it's so funny because some of my friends, they believe in astrology, but they're kind of like, okay, Elizabeth, like it's fine. They love me and accept me. But, you know, certain times, like, you can keep looking for a house. If it's not in your chart that you're going to get it, you're not going to get it, whether you give the highest offer or not. When it's not your time, it's not your time.
That's what astrology is all about. You know, I love when people say, well, thank my lucky stars. They have no idea that they're referring to astrology when they say that.
Oh, it's so funny because I was hanging out with neighbors and it was, you know, the night of the Conor McGregor fight where he ended up breaking his leg really bad. And somehow they, you know, they were talking about that and they were talking about lottery and they're like, oh, well, I guess you'd have to like have lucky stars. And I was like, actually, funny story about that. You really do need like lucky stars and like just the right transits.
Yes. And so many people talk about Mercury retrograde is never do anything. But, you know, I started flying for an airline when Mercury was retrograde. And I'm telling you, that was the best job, and it lasted for so long. So,
Yeah.
you have to really understand, not just like, oh, don't do anything when Mercury's retrograde. No, you have to understand what this means. And Mercury is the indicator for travel. That's when I started this job. And what people don't understand many times is when a planet goes retrograde, that planet becomes a focus. And where you start looking, because it's going the opposite direction of all the other planets. It's saying, look at me, I have something to show you. And that's where we have to look at these planets in a different respect, not just like, it's not black and white, in other words.
No.
Yes. So
not at all.
There's another thing I want everyone to know about you that's amazing. You write for Astrologic magazine, and you've been writing the horoscope sign predictions for a long time now. And
2 years, I think it's just over 2 years now, and still going.
I know, that's amazing. And that is hard work. Every month you got to know where the planets are. You got to apply them to each sign and what's going on. And you do that beautiful. That's another one of your gifts, writing. Yes.
Yep.
You also do the Who's in the News. You've taken that over for me. Thank goodness. I didn't have the time to do it. And that teaches you so much, because every month you kind of look for who is in the news, you find their birth data. And oh my God, when you write about these famous people and what's going on and why it happened astrologically, it's amazing. I wrote that piece for about 5 years till you took it over. And I got to say, you have it down. And I know you learned so much from doing that every month, because I did. Tell me a little bit about your experience with writing for Astrologic.
So, it's so funny, because I love looking at people. I love people. I love people's lives. I love seeing the planets in people's lives. So I wrote at the time, before I started with Astrologic, I wrote an article on Lori Loughlin, and I was like, was this whole thing in her stars? And, I just sent it over to Joni, like, hey, like, what do you think of this? Like, just starting out. She's like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Like, you need to do more of this. And she's like, hey, would you be willing? And I was like, yeah, like, obviously I'd be willing to like do that. And then I think it was like a month later, you're like, hey, can you do sign predictions too? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to do. So, with the Who's in the News, it's fun, because I love watching the people and who's in the news and seeing, and, I'm actually working on a book around people and going in depth on their charts. And I've gotten permission from some of my clients to use real people, not just celebrities, because we're all like, okay, well, they all have like great charts, and like, what about me? And like, how do I relate? So I've gotten permission from some of my real clients to use them in this book I'm writing, that, I got to figure out when it's coming out, but it's almost done. But writing for Astrologic is, I love it. And, it's fun to see, I have people that friends on Facebook that don't believe in astrology, and they read my Who's in the News every month like clockwork. They're just like, I'm ruled by Mercury. I mean, if you're an astrologer, you probably could tell that. I love Mercury. I love writing. I love traveling. I love the people side, talking. It just really, you learn so much, and you see, it's like Tiger Woods. You see his ups and downs. You see his ability with golf. You see the accidents. It's all there. You just, that's why we say, like, go get readings done. Like, don't, it's so important. If we all go to doctors, and, astrologers can be just as valuable as going to a doctor every year, or.
So true. Get a checkup.
Right. So.
Yeah. So with doing the sign predictions, I feel like when you know where the planets are every single month, because you're following them when you're doing the sign predictions, all you have to do is just plug it into every chart you look at. Yeah. Yep. So I always encourage all my students to do this, but you've taken it to a new level. And
hey, I always know people are like, is something going on? I'm like, actually, yeah, something is going on.
Yeah.
Like, you're feeling this way for a reason. And, you know, we always joke, like, obviously the sign predictions don't take into account people's personal charts. So your chart could have some planets that are getting affected more than, like, you know, this other person's chart. So it's all going to be, it can give a slight flavor of what you can expect every month. But I always say, like, you know, if you really are in a hard time, or, like, you know, usually people come to us in hard times because they're trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, go, there's some great astrologers out there, and go get readings. Like, it's worth it if you can make sense of it, or figure out, you know, how much longer this is going to be a thing. Or
Exactly. I feel like when you can give people hope, and when you can tell them when it's going to be over,
yeah,
that
yeah,
always helps people. Well, I know it's going to be over on this date. I can get through this. But when you feel like it's never going to end, sometimes people, you know, they go into the very dark places. But I think
very.
that vision to know when something's going to be over is one of the greatest gifts we can give to clients when they're going through a hard time. And but another thing is, when I inspire my students to write, as I have you, you can take all those writings, as I have, and put them into a book later. Because, you
Yeah.
know, that you've already, you know, when I put out my very first book, Eastern Astrology for Western Minds, back in 2003, um, these were all the classes that I had taught at my center. And I had already all the handouts. So I put them all together and then just added examples to explain what each of my classes were all about. So I encourage people to write, to do research, because you'll always use that information later. And you are
Absolutely.
a great example. We'll have to let everyone know when your book comes out, Elizabeth. I'm really excited. Do you know what the title is yet?
Still working on it. I've got a couple ideas in the back of my head.
Okay.
But it's on the back end. I'm almost finished with it.
I am so
So it's kind
proud
of
of
a
you.
first time I've ever shared that I've done that, or that I'm doing that.
Good. Well, now you
So
have to finish.
I know, exactly. Now I've
No,
got
don't
that.
now. And I
It's
know
like,
you'll finish, because you always do. You're, you know, you set a goal and you always reach your goals. I know. So any
yep.
last words you want to say to everyone about astrology or the university or anything?
I mean, I would just say, you know, I've seen it play out in my life. I've seen it play out in my mom's life, my dad's life, you know, friends' lives. It's Astrology is powerful, you know, whether, even if you don't believe it, go get a reading from a professional astrologer and see what they can give you as information. Because I think it's always shocking to people. You know, we don't sit there and Google you before. Like, we don't care. We only look at the planets. We don't have time to sit there and Google you. So if you think we're Googling you, we're not, like, at all. It's not, I got other things to do.
Yeah.
But, you know, if it hadn't been for my reading with Joni, and then the university, and how she empowered me throughout the university and through, you know, the final semester working directly with her, you know, and then it's been a crazy, like, 3-year period, and I would change nothing. And I'm excited to keep working with you, Joni, and see where things go, and, you know, help more people, because that's really my ultimate. I want to help people and help make this very practical, down to earth, and useful. So it's not just like, well, Mercury's retrograde. You know, how does it affect you?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think you have done amazing. I'm so proud of you. And I know we're going to grow together. And we've got
Yes.
a lot more big things to do. So I just want everyone to know about Elizabeth. And if you would like a reading with Elizabeth, we're going to put a link down below where you can contact her and set one up. And, you know, and if you're interested in coming on board and learning with all of us, remember, you can go check out the University of Vedic Astrology, and that's universityofvedicastrology.com. So thank you again, Elizabeth, and I look forward to a vast, exciting future. And I know you're going to be speaking at some of our conferences coming up in the future. So I want to inform you that that's coming for you as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I look forward to it.
Yeah, but I haven't set a date because, you know, life is so busy. And yeah, I've got my youngest son's going to probably get me. Well, he's getting married next year. So, well, I got to plan around all that. But we're going to all come together at a conference at some point. Haven't gotten the plans together, but you're going to be one of the speakers because I think you're brilliant. So thank you for joining and sharing all of your gifts with the world today, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joni. I so appreciate you and this opportunity.
You're welcome. Okay. Bye-bye.